Alright, let's talk about drawing lines and splines in Inventor. So first we need to create a new part. I can do that by clicking on a part, or new, and then a standard part file, and create. So we always go from 2D to 3D. So let's start with our 2D sketch, and that's all we're going to do with this example. And then we're going to do that on the XY plane. And now there's a couple of ways that we can start a 2D sketch of a line. So I can do that by either clicking up here in my ribbon. I can also right click and create line. You notice there's a bunch of functions here, but the line is the one that's by going straight up. So let's create a line, and we're going to create our first line without the heads up display. So I want you to notice though, as I create my line and I move it out, if I move it close to the x-axis, it doesn't say anything near my cursor, but as soon as I put it on the x-axis, you now see that it wants to make it a horizontal line. And so if I do that, I can click and set it, and now I have a horizontal constraint to this line. I can do the same thing with my vertical line now, and if I click now, this is now a perpendicular line. It's perpendicular to this previous line, which also means that it's vertical because this is horizontal. But we have created two lines now that are constrained to be horizontal, and this one is perpendicular to the horizontal line. Okay, so I'm going to either right click and escape, or you can just press escape on your keyboard to get out of that. And I'm going to undo those lines. Now let's create a line using the heads up display. So as I move my cursor to the center origin, it turns green. That's going to create a coincident constraint. And now I'm going to make my horizontal line yes, but you now see, or maybe you notice, that there is a highlighted text. In this case it's 0.754 inches. If I know that my line needs to be 1 inch, I can actually just type that in as 1, or you can put 1 inch. And then I could tab over, since it's a horizontal line, it needs to be 0 degrees, so I can press 0 and then press enter. Now that line is set, and my vertical line, let's say that I know that the vertical line is 1/2 inch, I could press 0.5, and that is going to be 90 degrees because this line was horizontal and 0. So now I'm going to make this one a 90-degree angle and press enter. And so now every time that I do that, it's going to create a constraint, a dimension constraint, and we'll talk more about those later. So I'm going to right click, escape, and that takes me out of my line command, and now I have created two lines. So I'm going to undo that, and let's learn a little bit about splines. So there's a couple of different types of splines, but let's talk about the control vertex spline. It's very similar to a line, but you can make these kind of curvy and have different shapes to them. So we're going to start it the same way that we've drawn our line, by clicking on the origin where it turns green, and now it looks just like creating a line tool, but it's a little bit different. Every time I click now, it's going to establish where the control points are, or the control vertices of my spline. So it's not actually going to be a part of our line, but it's just going to create the contours. So if I click up here, and then I click down here, and kind of create like an M almost, then I've now created what we call a spline. And so I can click the check mark, or I can right click and click escape. Oops, that got rid of it. Let me try it again. Maybe don't press escape. Draw my little M, and then I can just click on the check mark to end that line. And now you'll notice that I have some points up here that I can actually move around to change the curvature of this line. And I have 3 of those points, so they can be moved once they're established, and you can actually remove them if you need to, but you can move these around after you create your line to add more contour or flow to your line. And so there you go. That's a little bit about lines and splines.